Tucker Carlson just went to the country of Jordan, or the Holy Land as he calls it, to interview a Christian Archbishop from Jerusalem, who is Palestinian, Israeli, and Jordanian. Tucker's main objective was to find out how Christians are treated in Israel. The problem is, when you get into the interview, you realize that Tucker is skillfully and deceptively crafting a narrative that doesn't match reality at all. What he is doing is dark and even dangerous. In case you don't know, we here at the Israel Guys are Christians living in the quote-unquote West Bank, and we have traveled and worked daily in both Judea and Samaria and Israel proper for 20 years and have real-world experience on this topic. Let's get into it. Real quick, before we get into Tucker's interview, you should definitely check out our Israeli flag patches. We have green as well as blue. Great to stick on your backpack or hat and show your support for the nation of Israel. Grab yours today by clicking the link down in the description below. Tucker Carlson started out his interview with a blatant untruth.
How are Christians in the Holy Land doing? Are they thriving or are they suffering? And the truth has become pretty obvious over the past couple of years, which is in Israel, they are not thriving. Their numbers are not growing, they are shrinking, and there's a huge debate about why, but the bottom line is there are fewer Christians now, far fewer, in absolute numbers and particularly as percentage of population than there were when the state was founded in 1948.
Anyone can do 5 minutes of research and find out that the Christian population in Israel in 1948 was around 35,000 to 40,000 people. Today, the Christian population in Israel is around 185,000 people. In his interview with the Archbishop of the Anglican Church in Jerusalem, the Archbishop points out that the Christian population dwindled to about half after the 1948 war.
So 1948 was the year that the political state of Israel was created.
That's correct.
And a huge percentage of the Arab population was expelled that year. 1967, the Six-Day War increased the territory of the state, and the majority is now called occupied territory. Were there big declines after both of those in the Christian population?
Absolutely. So you can think about, the Christian population, it dwindled to half in 48 because many people had to leave.
Keep in mind here that the 1948 war is where 5 Arab nations attacked the brand new state of Israel in an attempt to wipe the Jews off the map. What Tucker and the Archbishop refused to point out here is that many of the local Christian Arabs joined in the attack against the Jews. The Archbishop then makes the claim that the majority of the Christians were forced out by Israel after the war. The truth is that after losing the war that they helped start against the nation of Israel, tens of thousands of Christians fled the land of Israel in fear of retribution from Israel for fighting against them. Why did they have this fear? Because this was the way that war worked for hundreds of years in the Middle East and Arab culture. When you win a war, you go and wipe out all your enemies that fought against you. Obviously, this was not the case with Israel. This takes us back to the main question. Is the Christian community in Israel growing? When you look at the Christian population over the years, you can see a steady growth rate since the state of Israel was reborn. The Christian population has even doubled in size just since the 1980s. Also, as far as thriving goes, the Christian Arabs in Israel have some of the best schools in Israel. In 2016, a report came out showing that 74% of Christian 12th graders were able to pass graduation exams compared to 41% of Muslims and 55% of Jewish students. Remarkably, unemployment rates for the Christian community in Israel are lower than the national average. A little later in the interview, Tucker goes on to claim that all Americans view Palestinians as terrorists.
So in the United States, as you may or may not know, Palestinian is a synonym, is the same word for Islamic terrorist. When people in the American media say Palestinian, it means someone who's an Islamist, basically. But you're saying that a lot of those Palestinians, refugees, were Christians, Anglicans even.
No, absolutely. I think there are many places in the world where people can use words that mean something really horrific.
Yes.
But I think that's demonizing. For me, that's demonizing.
Well, it sounds also untrue.
Absolutely. Because, I think when you speak about Palestinians, I'm Palestinian.
Yeah.
And I'm an archbishop. Do I look terrorist to you? Like
No, you look like an Anglican, actually.
This is actually untrue on its face, as we saw in the aftermath of October 7th. If Americans, as Tucker claims, really thought that all Palestinians were Islamic terrorists, why would there be protests across the country in support of Palestinians in Gaza? Nevertheless, I do believe there is some truth to this claim about Palestinians and people associating them with Islamic terror.
Yeah, so I think, like this is, again, this is like a kind of killing the image of the Palestinian people by claiming that they are terrorists or they are uncivilized or they are savages or, I think this is exactly like just pushing an agenda where they just want to frame you so that Palestinians lose sympathy in the world. That's basically what it is.
What's striking to me is that narrative, as you said, that image is being pushed not just by Jewish supporters of Israel, but in the United States, heavily by Christian supporters of Israel. Christian supporters of Israel in the U.S. are dismissing their brother Christians in this region as terrorists.
So on the one hand, most Americans do not think that all Palestinians are Islamic terrorists. On the other hand, there is truth that many Palestinians are terrorists or at least support terrorism. And Tucker conveniently doesn't really pay attention to facts. A poll that came out a few months after October 7th showed that 83% of Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria, the quote-unquote West Bank, agreed with Hamas's actions on October 7th. 83%. That means that 83% of Palestinians, which includes the Palestinian Christians, support murdering, raping, torturing, and kidnapping of Jews. But of course, the Archbishop and Tucker refused to point out any of these facts. If Palestinian Christians, like the Archbishop, are so upset about being grouped with Palestinian terrorists and terrorist supporters, which is at least 83% of the population, then maybe they should move to a different country, or at the very least, try speaking out against that Islamic terrorism that is marring the name of Palestinians. Tucker then goes on to ask the Archbishop if Christian politicians and Christians around the world are helping Christians in Jerusalem. The Archbishop tells him this.
Have American politicians called, since the U.S. is funding a lot of this, have American politicians, Christian politicians called to ask you what they can do to help Christians in Jerusalem?
We reach out, they reach out, they especially talking about different issues. Like, let me give you an example. I'm trying to kind of get to my hospital in Gaza, for example.
Yes.
And I'm trying to kind of get permission to go there, but I'm not allowed.
To go to your hospital in Gaza?
Yes.
Why?
You see, I have an Israeli citizenship because I come from Nazareth, so I'm an Israeli citizen.
Well, you are an Israeli. Right?
Yeah, well, yes. But, at the same time, so basically I'm not allowed in according to their calculations.
Why?
So I tried to ask, the kind of our friends from the American embassy and other places, in order to intervene, but the answer is no.
First of all, the Archbishop said in the beginning of the interview that he was a Palestinian, even though he was born in Israel and not the quote-unquote area that people call Palestine. But now he admits that he's an Israeli citizen. Then he insinuates that Israel is discriminating against him as a Christian because he is not allowed to go into Gaza. The funny thing is that he actually admitted to the actual reason that he's not allowed to go into the Gaza Strip, because he is Israeli. No Israeli is allowed into the Gaza Strip except the soldiers who are currently deployed there. For that matter, no one else is even allowed into the Gaza Strip. It is no wonder that the American embassy did not try to help him get in. Number one, he is not an American, so therefore the embassy doesn't really help non-Americans. And number two, if no one is allowed into Gaza, why would they try and get special permission to allow him to travel into a dangerous war zone to visit a hospital? Again, Israel is not discriminating against Christians in Israel. Those who are Israeli citizens are treated just like every other citizen by Israel's government.
How are you treated in Israel?
Depending where you live, where you are, where you're walking. So I think, in many places in Israel, where you are respected, there's freedom of movement. I can go in most places. There are places that are restricted to any civilian, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
But, in general, I can go in many places. If I'm walking in the old city, for example, if I'm in my suit, all good and well, of course, the mosaic is so beautiful there, people living together, walking together, you would enjoy the souk. But sometimes if I'm wearing my cross and my cassock, I could be treated differently by some groups.
How are you treated?
I could maybe spat at, for example.
Has someone ever spit at you?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
More than once?
More than once. Yeah.
Why?
I think, I asked this question why. And in many cases, I have seen that, like in many schools in the Jewish sector who have, this is the answer that I receive, who have bad flashes of memories of persecution. The cross reminds them of persecution and expulsion and what have you.
So they're teaching their children that the cross is a sign of persecution and to spit on Christians?
Yeah.
Tucker here is really pressing him to answer in a way that will fit his narrative. What the Archbishop said here, though, is actually 100% correct. The reason that he would maybe occasionally get spat at if he was wearing a cross is because for 2,000 years and even up into recent history, Jews have been persecuted, expelled, and mass murdered under the name of Christianity and the cross. Christianity has a horrific history with the Jewish people, and Israel has a very valid reason to despise a symbol and religion that has caused them so much death and suffering. The main thing that I want to point out from this whole interview is that Tucker obviously came to these interviews with the goal of painting Israel to be massively oppressing Christians in Israel. Even without my observation today pointing out the many lies put forth in the interview, the entire video is a very weak argument for this narrative. The absolute worst example they could come up with of Jewish persecution of Christians was several Jews in Jerusalem spitting at Christians. Not even spitting on Christians, but on the ground directed at them. The Archbishop made that very clear in the interview.
No, that's something different. And the spitting doesn't happen directly at you. So if I'm passing, and they would be spitting in front of you, but it's directed to you, but not on you person. They don't touch you. They don't touch you.
This doesn't make these incidents okay, but is it horrific persecution? Is it oppression of the Christian community in Jerusalem? I think I'll let you answer that one for yourself. We didn't have time to get into it today, but the other half of Tucker's show was about trying to paint out that Christians are treated really well under Muslim rule. All you have to do is do a little bit of actual research on this topic to find out how preposterous this narrative actually is. The question we all should be wondering is, what are Tucker Carlson's real motives for pushing these narratives? Guys, thanks for watching. Don't be fooled by the lies and propaganda out there on Israel. Keep praying for God's land and people. And don't forget to check out our Israeli flag patches, show your support for Israel. Just click that link down in the description below. As always, thanks for watching.